So I'd like you all to give a really warm welcome to Chris Short, all the way from Michigan, with his DevOps is not war.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Oh boy, I have the mic now. Be scared. Hey everybody, I'm Chris Short. I work at Red Hat. I run a newsletter called DevOpsish. So I have run a newsletter called DevOpsish. Thank you, Nirmal. I don't self-promote it because I feel like self-promotion is not great. But as Jason advances my slides for me, I will talk around it. The premise of the newsletter is DevOps, obviously, but there's more to DevOps than just tools, right? Like a lot of the newsletters I had read in 2016 were about tools, not so much about processes, and certainly nothing about like people and how to manage people better or how to manage people more effectively or how to manage myself more effectively. Like I'm a disabled veteran, so that accounts for a small percentage of the population that, when you consider even further out, like mental disabilities or mental dysfunction, thank you, sir. Not dysfunction, that was a poor choice of words. But anyways, I am Chris Short. I run a newsletter called DevOpsish. Check it out. I am from Detroit. I used to live here, and I live in Detroit. Don't sleep on Detroit. That is all pictures from the past 9 months. Doesn't look like a lot of blight. Doesn't look like a lot of crime. Doesn't look like anything. It's actually awesome to be in downtown Detroit now. It's a cool place. People younger than me hang out there. I think that's cool. All right, I work on the Red Hat OpenShift team. Chris Collins is one of my coworkers. He pointed out, a lot of people here don't know what OpenShift is. Chris, can you tell them? Sure, it's Red Hat's version of Kubernetes with stuff on top. That's my sales pitch for that. I'm a CNCF ambassador. If you don't know, Kubernetes is actually licensed to CNCF. Why? Well, it's kind of hard for Amazon and Microsoft and everybody else to work on a project like Kubernetes if Google holds all the intellectual property for it and could change the license at any point in time. Give it to the CNCF, that license is now open source forever, and everybody can contribute equally. That's the idea. So what does that mean? That means this eye chart of the CNCF landscape of tools that you can use in the cloud native ecosystem, I can help you with. At least that's what I'm told. Kubernetes is the big picture, though. But the reason why I'm here is because I have experience in both DevOps, most recently, and war in another life. I served in the U.S. Air Force from 1999 to 2010. I was injured in 2003 and medically separated at the end of 2010. To inspire confidence, I put a picture up here of me sitting on a toilet with a switch above it. That is a $4,500 Cisco switch with fiber interconnects and all the trimmings sitting in a bathroom next to an exhaust fan. What could possibly go wrong? Absolutely nothing. But stupid shit happens everywhere. Sorry, I'm a veteran. There will be cussing in this talk. Sorry, Jason. But that does not mean that I'm constantly aware of things, in my IT environment, right? Like I don't need the level of awareness that I had when I was in the field because of the statistic that I made up. In my home office in Michigan, I will not be taking direct fire. If I am, well, that's weird. I should probably address that. But it's the same thing, right? Like I was talking to someone from Ashley Furniture. He explained to me that he tries to explain to people, we're just making furniture. It's not the end of the world. Yes, we might miss our numbers, but we're just making furniture. Someone actually had to pull me aside, my first job out of the Air Force, and been like, Chris, it's just the news. We're just publishing the news. It's not war. The Obama administration kind of changed that, but we'll see. So anyways, we're going to make DevOps here. Not war. So today we're talking about conflicts and what we can learn from them. That's the biggest thing, the takeaways. We're going to attempt to have history not repeat itself. So, show of hands. Who's had a conflict occur during a digital transformation in their organization? DevOps, anything. I mean, we're going from this OS to that OS. Yeah, pretty much the room. Thank you. If you have gotten into these big disagreements, there's probably a reason why. It's actually rooted in history. So let's tackle some concepts and some people first. All right, we're going to talk about Thucydides. Say it with me. Thucydides. Yeah, no, none of you are going to say that right by the end of the talk, but I will try. You can try at the end for bonus points. We're going to talk about Graham Allison, and we're going to talk about a thing he created called Thucydides Trap, or he coined called Thucydides Trap. So, who's Thucydides? This great granite statue in the middle of nowhere. Actually, he's a Athenian historian and general. He wrote the history of the Peloponnesian War, which recounts the 5th century BC war between Sparta and Athens. Kind of a big deal. Used impartiality and evidence gathering in this kind of reporting as opposed to, hey, this weird thing happened. It must have been from the gods. That was the deal back then, right? 5th century BC, if something went wrong, it was because of the gods. So, often called the father of scientific history, often referred to as father of the school of political realism. So living in the current now, not trying to just blame things on, well, this thing happened, let's not go dive in and figure out why. All right, who is Graham Allison? Graham Allison works as a Harvard professor and American political scientist, but he's been an advisor and consultant to the Pentagon since the 1960s. Still is. So if you go from the 1960s to now, think about all the different administrations that have come and gone. He's been there the whole time. This man knows more about defense policy than probably anyone else on the planet, especially when it comes to U.S. defense. So he's been a member of the Secretary of Defense's Defense Policy Board, which is an exclusive group since 1985. So he's fought Soviets and he's fought terrorists, but strategically. He's best known for his political scientist for his book, The Essence of Decision, explaining the Cuban Missile Crisis, what went wrong, what went right. But this is all happening in the political sphere. This was in the 70s when he wrote this book. That sounds like a postmortem, right? Like this is what he built his career on, a postmortem in the 70s. All right. Allison coined this term Thucydides Trap. I'm going to read it because it's important. Refers to the natural, inevitable discombobulation that occurs when a rising power threatens to displace a ruling power. This can happen in any sphere. Any sphere. It can happen in dev teams. It can happen in your household. It can happen anywhere. You got a teenager that can suddenly drive and has some independence. That is a rising power. You're an established power. It doesn't mean you're going to war. Hopefully. Hopefully. That's why we're here. So, intentions aside, when a rising power threatens to displace a ruling power, the resulting structural stress makes a violent clash the rule, not the exception. Well, that's not a good sign. I don't like violent clashes. I did that. No fun. So let's look at the past 500 years and look at the use cases that Mr. Allison did. Every little peace sign, that was a good outcome. Every little bomb blast, that was a war. So 12 out of 16 cases in the past 500 years resulted in war. They're listed here from late 5th century to now, essentially. Looking at post-Soviet Europe, basically. All right. So the 4 cases that avoided this outcome did so only because of huge, painful adjustments in attitudes and actions on both part of the challenger and challenged alike. So that mainframe team and that DevOps team, whoever's doing DevOps in your group, that, whatever you want to call them, there's bending on both sides. That has to happen. That's the point here. So, quick overview. Let's bridge the two concepts a little bit better. We're going to talk about DevOps, we're going to talk about fear, and then we're actually going to bring it back into an actual use case of U.S. history and UK history. That way I can use this talk in Europe. So, let's talk about DevOps. DevOps. Closer together, sitting by the campfire, roasting s'mores, singing songs, pull requests everywhere. Everybody's happy, right? Yeah? A show of hands earlier when I asked about digital transformation. No one's laughing. Yeah, it's because it's bullshit. It doesn't, no. Everybody has conflict, right? Like devs want to do it this way. Ops and security need it to be done a certain other way because they have different incentives. Feature delivery, sustainability. So those two are always going to be in some form of conflict and need to work together to make the business outcome the goal, not the thing that is in the way of everything else. So the divide here is closing, right? This is the 10th year of DevOpsDays events running across the globe. So I would say DevOps is here to stay. It is the rising power potentially. Only the outliers are kind of remaining, which means not Silicon Valley. So all of us in the room, because we're not sitting in Silicon Valley. But pretty much all the big Facebooks, Amazons, everybody else are adopting DevOps mentalities and moving forward from there. So, terrifying. DevOps is happening. Last year, I was working as a DevOps consultant with a firm that consulted with the U.S. government. They responded to a call for help from the U.S. Strategic Command. If you're not familiar with them, long story short, they control all the U.S. nuclear weapons, the strategy, and their use. So, kind of a big deal when they're like, hey, we'd like to adopt DevOps and Agile. Actually happened. Really happened, right? And they called out specific things, specific tools that they wanted, specific processes they wanted to put in place. They mentioned Agile. They mentioned all these things. It's still available. You can go read the whole call out. Go to that website. It'll take you right to it. You can download the PDF of the presentation, read the whole thing. Very impressive. But they're modernizing the U.S. nuclear weapons force using DevOps and Agile. Give yourselves a round of applause. You've literally penetrated every corner of Earth. DevOps. The lowest of silos, doing DevOps in the sky now, on airplanes. So, when people say that won't work here, I say malarkey. That basically means you're unwilling to change if you say that won't work here. I don't want to hear that won't work here ever again is what I tell people, but I know I will because that's the nature of humanity. We don't like change. So, in Allison's book, he mentions it was the rise of Athens and the fear that instilled in Sparta that made war inevitable. So fear is a very powerful thing. That is why conflict occurs normally, is fear. Challenging the status quo can have horrible side effects. We've all seen it. If you don't believe me or Mr. Allison, I give you Jedi Master Yoda. Fear leads to hate, or fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. If you fear something, you're going to be mad about it eventually. If you're mad about it, you're going to fight back, and you're going to hate it. And that hatred will lead to suffering, and you'll do it to yourself if you're not careful. So keep that in mind. If you're pushing back on something, ask yourself, why? There might be a reason that maybe you're just not letting go and advancing forward. That's potentially a thing. So, it's the rise of something new, DevOps, and the fear it instills in people that makes conflict possible. Does that make sense? Breaking down these concepts. So let's look at a recent success story of peaceful success of global power transfer. By 1916, the American GDP overtook the combined economy of the entire British Empire. The whole damn thing. Everything in red was the British Empire. That little piece of land just south of Canada overtook the entire economy of that by 1916. The British Prime Minister actually said in the early 1900s, a war with America, not this year, but not in the distant future, has become something more than a possibility. Like they saw a challenge to their global domination coming, and they were worried about it because they didn't know what the future would look like in a world dominated by, well, people that separated from them. The First Lord of the Admiralty in 1901 said, "I would never quarrel with the United States if I could possibly avoid it." But surprisingly, Despite Teddy Roosevelt rapidly expanding the U.S. Navy, despite the Monroe Doctrine pretty much locking the British Empire out of the Western Hemisphere, leaving them no place to actually effectively conduct a war from, it led to this problem of this thing could happen, but no way for it to actually execute. And then World War I rolls up. The UK basically said, we're going to concede global power to focus on problems at home. You can take this thing over, and please come help us with this problem, was the story by the end of World War I. So the special relationship was formed. That relationship has endured ever since. So this massive empire opted out of global domination because it required a war with the U.S. If you look on this map, invading the U.S. from the north is a terrible idea. Why? Because there's nothing up there. So you invade nothing, you gain nothing. Your troops are worn out, done. Then you make contact with the enemy. Not a good idea. So they opposed a lot of provocations. The Monroe Doctrine, we got fairly hostile with at one point. But they just decided, hey, listen, they have the ground here. They have the high ground. There's no possible gain with this problem in our backyard that we could get from going to war with the United States right now. So when World War I came, like I mentioned, the U.S. was an essential supplier of material to the UK. We're sending armored convoys over to the UK, supplying them with anything, and then eventually we joined the fight that tipped the scales toward an Allied victory. Let's just stop there. Let's not worry about the Treaty of Versailles or anything else. Great success story, right? Okay, so DevOps is a sea change. It's not automating. It's not tearing down silos. It's a different way of thinking about work. It's a process that you put into place. Combine it with some tools and some people, a little strategy, off you go. Let's not forget about everyone else that's here with us, though. DevOps is also about making our workplace better. Improving customer happiness ultimately improves employee happiness. Oh, wait, that actually works in inverse, too. If you improve employee happiness, your customers end up happier as well. So, some people feel threatened by cloud and fast changes. I just got bought by IBM, like Red Hat did, so I didn't get it bought. Red Hat just got bought by IBM. I was a little scared. But then Anne-Marie gets up here and tells me all the stuff that they just automated, and they're working on automating security into their Kubernetes pipelines. And I'm like, well, I don't do that. That's a step beyond what I'm doing right now. Cool, I can work with them. So, DevOps the war crime. It is not. They're here to help. We're here to help make the company better. We're here to help our customers. We're here to help make our organizations achieve their business outcomes faster. So, will you have to relearn everything you know? No. I didn't have to relearn everything I know coming from the military to DevOps. I've worked so hard to get here and now I have to pivot. No, it's just a gentle change and correction, just like every other gentle change and correction you've made, going from Windows to Linux to cloud to whatever's next. Empathy is still important. We talked about that a lot today and yesterday. So should I just retire now? I got to tell the story. Someone worked on my monitoring team in a company I work with, and it was very, stodgy monitoring equipment or software. And I was talking to him about, hey, spinning up stuff in AWS, spinning it down, just running stuff during builds. He's like, how am I going to monitor that? Like, you monitor API calls. Huh? So yeah, that's the thing that matters. That's the metric that matters. What is AWS bill on? Usage and API calls. That's what we need to monitor. Are we overusing AWS? Yes, the performance is the thing that we care about the most of that application. We'll get that out of APM. That's already in our apps. But all you have to do is change the incentive base for a monitoring person to say, hey, keep those AWS calls, API calls lower, and we'll save thousands of dollars every month. That's it. All you had to do was just change the way of thinking. So that's cool and wonderful, but what happens when you need more hardware? Network. Network's a thing that's never going to go away. We're always going to need network. We can software define it all we want, but there actually has to exist a copper link between things, or maybe fiber, or maybe wireless. But that's all network. That's all 802.11 something. So, automating that infrastructure, though. If you throw a switch in a rack and you push a button and it configures itself, that saves a lot of time. That network engineer could then figure out the next problem to tackle, the next problem to automate. The best thing you can do with any good network engineer is give them more problems to solve. They'll solve them. But then if you give them the tools to automate them, they'll automate that problem away, and it'll be solved forever, and then keep solving more problems. They understand cool things too, like VLANs and VPCs and NATs. They've been working with that stuff for a while. Let them in. Let them configure your cloud. Bring your security people in. All the DevSecOps talks you've heard this morning, like, this is a necessary term. This is just table stakes now. You've got to shift left and bake security into your pipelines. I publish a static website. I still make sure that there's no code running on it. I actually run checks to make sure there's no JS, no nothing that shouldn't be there. Who knows if that pipeline's been compromised? Put it everywhere. Security should be everywhere. It should just be baked in. No, you don't have to completely relearn everything. You just got to know where to put it. Actually, writing some of these CI/CD pipelines now are pretty easy. If you look at GitHub Actions or GitLab CI/CD, like, those pipelines are easy to manage. If you can get into that kind of workflow, you can put security right in there with it. Run that pen testing in the pipeline. Vulnerability scanning as a commit hook. Think about that. Oh, I need to do a static analysis on this commit to master. It just starts. Done. Like, that's simple to do now. They're simpler to do now. Prove to security that DevOps helps their cause as much as it helps yours. It's a work. You got to work to get there, though. All right. DevOps isn't just for IT. This is where a lot of people are like, okay, Chris, you lost me. Business processes matter. In my newsletter, I focus on 3 topics: people, places, and tools. Or processes and tools. People, processes, and tools. I've written this newsletter for 3 years now. You'd think I know that. So business process matters probably more than anything in any organization when it comes to cultural change, right? Like, if you don't have a good communication system within your organization, that is not going to help in any kind of transformation. If you have a blameful organization, oh, you screwed up the network, he's packing up his stuff, that's not going to help, right? We've learned that. So, guess what? Bringing more allies into the fold actually helps things. Working for Red Hat, I can kind of say that, like, having somebody on the UI team for Ansible Tower design a logo for a special project that we're working on as a side thing, like, that's incredibly powerful. But that was just a favor. Now we have a logo, like a banner of sorts to get behind. That's incredibly powerful. Imagine your team having a special sticker that you can put on your laptop. Are you going to design it? You could. You can just ask one of your buddies in marketing or design or anywhere. Hey, how do you print stickers? Who do you use for art? Build a relationship there. It can help you. You want to host a meetup? Maybe a DevOpsDays in your office. You gotta bring these people on board and work with them. You can work with salespeople to help your delivery process of customer delight work better. You can engage with marketing to help change language, to help move the product to a better position within the market just by talking to them more and understanding their problems. Everyone can help tearing down walls of confusion. So open up those lines of communications. All right, change and failing fast. Either you're a learning organization or you're losing to one. Andrew Clay Schaefer said that. So you have to continuously learn. We inherently value success, so you have to, think in a little bit different way. Success could be learning from a mistake. It's like I was trying to explain to somebody, there's a way to treat a failure as a success in Ansible, right? Like if you expect the script to always fail, and that is what you expect, there's a way to change that to actually be a good thing in Ansible. Failure sometimes is acceptable, and you can learn from it, thus making it a success, a successful learning experience. You can't learn from those mistakes, though, if you never make them. So you have to be open and honest about it's safe to make mistakes here. Go read Project Aristotle, the work that Google did on psychological safety. It's absolutely amazing and talks about how to create the environment that can foster a better DevOps transformation. Read up on Safety 1 and Safety 2 versus Signe Decker. And if you haven't read the Phoenix Project or Beyond the Phoenix Project, remember that pulling the andon cord is good. The andon cord, if you're not familiar, is the thing in the Toyota line. It's actually a button now. Push the button, stops everything in the production line. They fix whatever systematic problem exists, start the line again, and move on. But then they take that fix and bake it back into the system immediately. So they're constantly improving their production workflow. Constantly. That's the Toyota Kata process. Mike Rother, he works at University of Michigan. He's written a ton about that. All right. So they won't let me talk forever. We know people feel threatened by DevOps. Acknowledge that. Explain to them. Build a bridge. Don't just say, nope, this is the way we're doing it now. It's not going to work. Find allies in creating successes together is key. Like the U.S. didn't just start shipping the U.K. material overnight. That had to get started in small, slow progress, and then it built into full-blown, conflict with an allied advance against an enemy. Early inclusion and concessions, especially concessions, are key to success. But including everyone in the process as early as possible is super awesome because that leads to failing faster. Because someone can come along and be like, no, we tried that once and it didn't work. Okay, so scratch that off the list. You can now figure out the outcome faster. And always be a learning organization. Always consume and learn and explore things outside of your normal life. Like history, for example. So I will leave you with a quote. It's kind of my modus operandi of right now as a veteran with kids. So I have one in college at the moment, and I must remind her that, listen, I studied politics and war so that you have the liberty to study math and philosophy. She's majoring in history. I'm very proud of her, but the quote is from John Adams, the second president of the United States. So he did this work, like I did, so that the next generation can go on and do something better. Remember, we're laying the foundations of where people are going to stand in the future. Thank you.